One factor that's often remarked on is the correlation, the inverse correlation between class or socioeconomic status and ethnocentric behavior. So, less prosperous, less educated, less successful, lower class or lower socioeconomic status whites have more ethnocentric behavior and attitudes, at least explicitly, while the more educated, more successful, more prosperous whites will have, let's say more tolerant and diversity-friendly, multicultural attitudes. Their behaviors are another question, and we'll get to that in a bit. And so it's assumed that these attitudes are more correct, that they're more enlightened, and the ethnocentric attitudes and behaviors of the lower class or poor whites are more ignorant and more backwards and more selfish or more malicious than those of the higher class or higher status, more educated whites. But this isn't necessarily the case because the lower class poorer whites are the ones who bear the costs of diversity most directly. They're the ones who have to live with it. They deal with it day to day in direct proximity, up close and personal. It's in their face all the time. And so, if anybody's in a position to know about the nature of diversity, it's these people. They're not stupid. They know, they see it, they live it. And, they bear the cost directly. Meanwhile, these educated urban liberals, these successful professionals or, intellectuals or whatever the case may be, they can afford to insulate themselves from it, and they do. They move out to the suburbs. They move to gated communities where they can get away from it, where they only have to interact with outliers or with elite diversity, which isn't nearly as bad. And so they're much more sheltered, they're much more insulated, and they choose to be. And so their behavior is implicitly ethnocentric, even if their attitudes are explicitly not. There's also a different incidence of benefits. So if you're an owner of capital, you benefit from mass immigration and from the increase in the supply of labor and from the decrease in wages. And if you're an owner of rental property, you benefit from an increase in population and an increase in demand for rental property. Whereas, the poorer lower classes are not realizing those benefits. They're paying those costs directly in the form of lower wages and higher rents. And so it's a transfer. There's a transfer of benefits from the lower classes to the upper classes, and from the lower middle class to the upper middle class. And, it's a parasitic transfer in a lot of ways. And so what you really have is a conflict of interest. It's not, somebody's more correct and somebody's more incorrect, or somebody's more, knowledgeable and somebody's more ignorant. You have a conflict of interests. And ideally you would like class cooperation. You would like a harmonious order that balances the interests of the various classes. But you can't have that if you are sacrificing your lower classes to alien lower classes, or even if you are sacrificing your lower classes to alien elites and middle classes. And this is really what it's about. Upper classes and middle classes can cooperate with alien upper classes, and even to some extent with alien middle classes, because their behavior is more positive sum. They don't have to argue about who gets how much pie, because they can make pie. All right, but lower classes and even the lower middle classes are much more dependent on benefits that they don't create themselves. Infrastructure, programs, jobs that they don't create themselves. They're reliant upon those. And so, that's much more zero-sum domain. There's much more competition over those opportunities and those benefits. And so you get this preoccupation with who gets how much pie, and if somebody else is getting more of it, then you're getting less. But if you want that vertical class cooperation within your race or within your ethnicity, then the upper classes can't engage in treason against the lower classes. They can't sell them out to aliens. And they have to forego those opportunities. They can still cooperate with alien elites. They can still cooperate with alien middle classes, but they might have to do so from a distance. They might have to, realize only a subset of those opportunities, not all of the possible opportunities to do that. And it's ultimately, it would prove better for them if they would show some loyalty, because lower classes that are related to them, that are akin to them, are going to be more loyal to them than some, mystery meat lower class composed of, a hodgepodge from all over the world, from all different cultures and backgrounds. There's not going to be any loyalty of that lower class to native upper classes. And so once that replacement is complete, they're really going to find themselves in a much worse situation than they started out with, even if they're deriving some rent in the short term from, dispossessing lower classes and lower middle classes and even middle classes, and basically gutting those people and their savings and their, fortunes, to increase the returns on capital by a few percent. So, if you want that cooperation, if you want that loyalty, it has to go both ways. And so if you want vertical cooperation, then, you can't stab the people below you in the back and sell them out, or you're going to get blowback. And that's what they're getting now with the Trump thing. And that's the start of it, but it's not the end. It's only going to continue. It's only going to intensify. And, they've really painted themselves into a corner here, because that blowback's not going to end. And, what they've done is not going to be forgotten. They tried to wipe us out, and it's only fair if the same happens to them in return.